Hello, my name's Tamika, and you're listening to A Walk in the Park with Animal Friends.
So now we're with Amy.
Hi.
Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank
Do you
you.
want to tell our listeners a little bit about you and what got you so into horses, and then what brought you to Mare and Foal Sanctuary?
So I got into horses when I was a child, like most children are, become horse mad. Mm-hmm. I was the crazy girl in the playground using other children as my horse with a skipping rope. And then I started riding at a local riding stables about 20 minutes away from me, basically lived there on the weekend. Mm-hmm. And then I unfortunately gave up horses at 14. Unfortunately, makeup and everything else became more exciting. And then it wasn't until I was doing A-levels and I thought, this is not for me. I don't want to be doing formal jobs. You know, I'm quite an unorthodox person, so it would really be silly for me to do something that's orthodox, shall we say. So I found out that you could actually do qualifications on horses and animals. So I did an animal management qualification. I then went to university and actually was very lucky to go to university at a site near Newquay Zoo.
Wow.
So I got to do lots of different things with different animals. And we were given a project to do on animal assisted interventions. Mm-hmm. And I picked horses as the species to speak about. And I thought, oh my days, how can I get involved with this? It just seems so powerful that we can have horses and people working together to help each other. So then that became my new focus. So I finished university, really struggled to find a job. And then the Mare and Foal Sanctuary were hiring, and weirdly enough, their actual original site is where I used to ride as a child. Oh. So it kind of felt like a bit of it's meant to be, because I've gone full circle from growing up there on the weekend and riding to then being an employee. Wow. And that was 8 years ago. So I've progressed through different areas of the sanctuary. So started off at the rehabilitation sites. A year and a half later, I then got asked to help manage the high intensity site of the retirement centre. Mm-hmm. I've got a soft spot for the little old ponies. Just because the body goes doesn't mean the brain goes, you know. And I spent nearly 2 years there. And then we had to sell that site for many reasons, and ended up coming into this job. But it was a new role. It was kind of a bit question marky in terms of what that looks like. Mm-hmm. But I've been very, very fortunate to kind of make it my own. And 4 years later, here I am.
Amazing.
And I've just been really passionate ever since, and really have had the opportunities to learn and grow in this industry and become a little bit of an expert, because what we always say, what do we say? The more you know, the more you don't know. So with horses, there's research coming out every year on different things, and it's important to kind of keep myself up to date. And that's why I love working here, because we get the opportunities to learn and develop, and that only makes us better at our job, right?
Yeah, of course. And you can tell just from talking to you how passionate you are about horses and how much you love this role. And I know that Mare and Foal Sanctuary are really big into education, and there's a little bit of education on end-of-life support, because I know that can be a little bit of a controversial subject in the horse kind of world. What support is it that Mare and Foal offers to people that have one of your ponies or your horses on loan?
So it's a decision that's not taken lightly. Obviously, we work very closely with our vets and the carers to try and find if there's any other solutions that we can do, whether it's management solutions or nutrition or medication or social needs, to see if there's anything else we can do to maybe help that horse or pony. However, sometimes you've done everything and it's kind of all the roads are leading to, unfortunately, the decision to be made to be put to sleep. Which obviously we know is an emotional situation, so we make sure to really educate and talk through the process with the carer, and hopefully that we can all come to the same conclusion, because all of us have animals, and to make that decision is not an easy one at all. But we can help understand the science behind it, the way forward and everything. We can offer some emotional support as well. We do actually have someone in-house who's got trained in pet bereavement, I think a few of us actually, and some mental health first aiders and champions. So we are then able to offer some emotional support as well. And then in terms of what actually happens, I don't know what happens out on loan, but I know what happens here with our horses. So when our horses, the difficult decision is made, what happens, it's on a planned day.
Yeah.
The reason it's on a planned day is we can make sure the environment is really quiet, because we don't want any visitors or anything or anybody showing up unnecessarily, because that's traumatic for them and the horse. We often give the horse or the pony a good last night. So, for example, if they've been on box rest for ages and not been able to eat much, whatever, providing it's not going to make them ill overnight, they'll be in the grassiest field with their best friends. They'll have a lovely groom, a bath, time with their carer. And to make sure that if they're going to go out, they're going to go out on happy circumstances. Not that they're not happy all the time, but sometimes with health conditions, we have to restrict. So to be able to give them that 24 hours of have whatever you like. I think one of the ponies that I was with, when his last moments, he managed to eat 6 packets of polos.
Nice.
So he's actually got the running record in-house of actually the most polos ever eaten. And then obviously we have the choice of staff as their main handlers, whether we'd like to be there until the end. And that's up to the comfortability of the staff member. I prefer to be there as a reassuring face, but others, understandably, if you can't do it, you can't do it. And the vet obviously will do their thing, and then we have to take a step back once the medication has been administered. And what we do is we have their companion in the field. And that might sound harsh in a way. However, we found when our horses don't realise that their companion's been put to sleep, they're really unsettled for a few weeks, just because they don't understand where the companion's gone. And it's really hard to see them. And often they'll have stress behaviours, they'll pace, they'll call, they might be off their food for a while. So horses do really feel the grief. However, when we've actually let them see the body and kind of hopefully understand what's happened, we found the stress time afterwards either is non-existent or is minimal, which means hopefully that they can kind of understand and come to terms with what's happened.
Crazy.
It's a really sad process, and you do get some that you can tell are not the same for a few weeks, for a while, but I think it's really important that we make that brave decision, because we don't want to prolong a life longer than necessary, especially for our own needs as humans. You don't want to say goodbye to anybody, but if the horse is really in that much pain and is not going to have a good quality of life, then what are we doing, really?
Exactly. And I think that shows obviously how sentient we are as human beings.
Absolutely,
how emotional it can be to let go of horses that you care for so long, but then how sentient horses are themselves, for that companion to be so taken aback by a loss that they've not witnessed.
Absolutely, especially as some of them have been together their whole lives. So we actually have some that are pair bonded and that we are able to rehome as a pair, or if they move sites, they'll travel together. So it'd be like having your family member that you've been with your whole life suddenly not there anymore and not understanding why. I can't bear the thought of that, to be honest. It's heartbreaking.
I don't know how you do it. I would be an emotional wreck every day.
Absolutely. But what's nice is we all support each other. So, if we know that a pony's going to go, particularly for those that are really attached, we'll often get a load of snacks. We'll have an extended lunch. We'll often share stories of that pony as well.
That's so sweet.
And kind of give them a mini send-off, really, in terms of us. Almost like a little bit of a wake.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's a really great feeling, like a real bond of experience,
yeah, absolutely. We share photos as well, because all of us, we'll take photos. We're out poo picking, especially if they're looking beautiful, which is all the time, but I'm biased. But it can be really hard, but we're lucky to have a supportive environment here as well, and a supportive workplace that it understands how we're feeling, because why wouldn't they? We're an equine welfare charity. So
that's so great. And then talking a little bit about initiatives that you have within the Mare and Foal Sanctuary. So is there any projects, any initiatives that have happened in your time whilst being here that you're really proud of being a part of? Any examples?
There's two kind of projects within the sanctuary that have really had my heart for years, and that's the high intensity welfare unit that we have. So it used to be kind of called our retirement centre, but it's more about high intensity needs, so horses with health conditions that really need that close monitoring and specialised care. And I think it's so wonderful that these horses have a place to end up if they no longer can be out on loan, which is another thing I really back here at the sanctuary, is that they always can come back if they need to. We know circumstances change and we're not judgmental. Life happens, particularly with the rising cost of the world at the moment. Horses are being more expensive than ever, really. So we do understand. But what's nice, if they can come back, they've got somewhere quiet and peaceful and decent to retire, because everybody deserves somewhere decent to retire, but particularly our ponies, because they've had a lot of harsh time, you know. So yeah, so that's what they always have my heart at the top, because they're also full of character as well. Just because they're old, it doesn't mean that the personality's died. There's so much individualism in all horses, actually. But yeah, I'm really passionate about giving the older horse the end of life that they deserve. Another thing I'm really passionate about here is obviously our education department. For many reasons, obviously there's so many benefits with people, and I could sit here all day and tell you about all those wonderful benefits, and you'll get benefits, and you'll get to have that later, obviously. But I think what I like about our education offer, it gives a place for every horse. Yeah. Because not every horse can be ridden. Not every horse can go out showing, whereas EAS, every horse can technically be part of the session, whether that's from being stood in a distance grazing, or that's direct contact leading in hand. Every horse has their place, and I think that can potentially contribute for their future as a breed, because they're a large animal that we don't eat and take up a lot of space, cost a lot of money. And I worry with the ponies that we can't ride, what is their future? You know, particularly our moorlands that are mid-size or little ponies that may be great for kids' ponies, but then long term they don't have a home, because a lot of the time people grow out of their ponies, they get passed from pillar to post. But it just gives another place, particularly for our moorland breeds, or our, what's the word I'm looking for? Particularly for our native breeds as well. You know, it can give them a job in society as well. And they appear to love it as well, which is nice here. We had a rescue case recently of some education ponies that were definitely not treated as they should have been, whereas here we indefinitely role model how they should be treated and listened to in and out of session. So,
I mean, you mentioned there the phrase loan horses. You keep saying loan. So am I correct in saying that every horse that comes through Mare and Foal Sanctuary, even if they do go out to a care, will always have a home here? Yes,
so we never fully sign our horses over, and that's just to safeguard their life for potentially up to 40 years, because we know horses can live as long as that. And again, it really supports the ever-changing world that's going on at the moment. As I mentioned earlier, it's a really challenging time for everybody, but animal owners, horse owners in particular as well, everything has gone up. So unfortunately, a lot of people are no longer to keep their horses. So this is where it's great if they do end up giving them back. It's fine, because they've got somewhere safe to return their whole life. It means as well that their care is constantly being monitored. So we have home checkers, welfare officers, that will go out and check that they're okay. And the length of visit, that depends on what's going on in the loan home and the type of pony. But we can make sure that they are being cared for in the way that we'd prefer. And that includes with their training, their management, their medical needs and things like that. So they are fully cared for in the way that they should be, regardless whether that's in loan or out loan. And I think that's just so powerful.
It is. It's fantastic because it completely just gets rid of that fear of them being back into that vicious circle of abandonment or not having the proper care. They're safe and cared for life once they've been brought here, aren't they? So it's
absolutely
it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And you spoke there a little bit about challenges. So the cost of everything coming back up again, horse owners struggling. What challenges have you been finding within Mare and Foal Sanctuary?
Oh, that's a good question. So I guess it's just money, because obviously we're a charity, we're a non-profit. So when it comes to needing bedding, fly masks, rugs, head collars, feed, I could be here all day. Everything has gone up, I think, between about 6 and 20%. And if you think on this site alone, we have about 50 horses. Then we have 150 horses-ish in-house in our other sanctuaries as well as, you know, energy costs and everything else. So it's a real challenging time for all animal welfare charities at the moment. And this is where it's really important when people do donate, even if it's £3, you know, that could be going towards a bale of hay or something else essential that our horses need. So I think that's the real challenge at the moment. It's just the cost of living, really.
So we spoke a little bit about the challenges that you've been facing here, and you mentioned you've got 50 horses, ponies on site at the minute.
Yes, just on this site. Yeah.
So one of them that we have right beside us is Geronimo. Geronimo is having a lovely little face down there.
Yes, he's munching away on his hay, bless him.
Having a great time. Tell our listeners a little bit about Geronimo.
So this is Geronimo. So Geronimo, he is 16. Geronimo, there's obviously something very different about him, if you can see. He's obviously only got one eye. So his eye was actually removed in 2019.
Okay.
The reason being he was getting a lot of eye problems like uveitis and cataracts that were causing him a lot of pain. And all the treatment that we were doing, it just wasn't working. So the decision was made to take out his eye. The operation went very successfully. It took a while in terms of recovery just to make sure that everything was healing as it should. Because interestingly enough, when you remove eyes of horses, they don't sink. So you can see with Geronimo, the eyelids don't sink in for a while. So you can always kind of tell when they've had it freshly done versus for a few years. So then Geronimo, as a result, we had to really adjust our handling because obviously his vision is very limited, only having one eye. I mean, horses are very lucky with their eyes. They can go almost 360 degrees, bar the blind spot right in front of the face or right behind them. But obviously with him, that could really elicit that fight, flight or freeze response because we've taken away arguably one of his senses. I know he can still see, but so we've had to take it really carefully and really gently. And what we found is he lost a bit of confidence with leading and with people because you can imagine a lot of the time Geronimo's interactions with people at the time were vets. And what do vets do? They come and do painful things as much as we can dance it up and make it as kind as possible, like we would. But for a while, he was a bit unsure of people. So he got given a new handler called Georgie, and what she's been doing some confidence training with him. So that's clicker training. So like you see with dogs and other animals, he does clicker training. And the idea is that he goes into an arena and he just has a fun time. There's no expectations. It's all about bonding and having that confidence to interact with people, knowing that there's nothing painful going to be done. So with Geronimo, he now can touch cones on cue and he'll knock them over. He likes to douche the ball with his nose. He goes boof. So he's had his confidence training, so he does little twirls as well, and obviously we're not trying to make him a circus animal or anything like that. It's just bonding, and again, if he doesn't offer any behaviours, doesn't want to do it, he's not forced to do it. But what we have found is he's really come out of his shell. He's a lot more interactive with people, to the point he does a lot of our Equine Assisted Services sessions.
Oh, that's great.
So he mainly takes part in equine assisted learning, which is a lot of working with them in their natural behaviour. He was also an absolute gentleman to walk. We find with some of our horses at this time of year, it's a bit of a walking buffet along the side of our roads. And some of them, bless them, it's just too much temptation. And obviously we'll pull a little bit, understandably, right? I mean, if I walk past a McDonald's buffet, I would be in there like a shot. But with him, he's just so polite and well-mannered. I know that's a very anthropomorphic term, but he is great in that respect, that he kind of won't pull. He almost goes into a bit of a mode when he's with one of my students. He's kind of like, okay, now's the time. I've got to be a really, really good boy. And again, I'm giving him a voice. He doesn't have one, but if he was to have a voice, that's kind of, I imagine, what he would say, really. But he's a very special boy, and he does appear to enjoy human interaction as well with our students, that one-on-one. And it's a nice teachable story as well, because he has quite an obvious difference. We understand his difference, we make adjustments for him, but actually we don't treat him any differently. He's exactly the same as all our lovely horses and ponies.
I love that. And where we're filming, for those who aren't watching, we're filming in a lovely big stable setting. We've got loads of horses dipping their heads in and out. You may have heard Telenor, yes. Telenor, you may have heard a little bit of banging on the gate. He was demanding some food. Do you find that a lot with horses? Do they tend to know, oh, there's food there, I'm going to knock for it?
Absolutely. So horses are creatures of routine, and these guys here have had pretty much the same routine their whole lives. So most of our horses tend to live out in the fields, because that's what's usually best for them, with a few caveats with health and behaviour. And then they'll come in about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and they'll get hay nets straight away and checked over and everything. And then they'll get their hard feed, and that'll often have medication in if they need it, or just a bit of bonus food depending on the time of year to keep condition and weight, etc. But it'll get to like 10 to 9. and you'll have a ponies down there. There's Cass is always in the corner. And any time a staff member comes around at that time, they'll start making loads of noise and become quite animated.
Right.
And that'll be in anticipation of the food because they so routinely know. It's like they must get hungry.
Yeah.
Like with us, when if we eat breakfast routinely, they get hungry at that time. And they all become quite animated, and different horses present differently in terms of that anticipation behaviour. So Telenor earlier was kicking the door.
Yeah.
That's his way of saying, I'm hungry, please can I have some food? You've got some that will be quite vocal, you've got some that will kind of look around and get quite investigative and quite, what's going on? There's lunch soon and I've not had it, you know. But that when you watch them waiting for their food like that, you can really tell their personalities.
Right on cue.
Right on cue, Telenor. Thank you so much.
So we just spoke a little bit about Geronimo, his story, how he came to be with Mare and Foal.
Yes.
So what about Didymus?
So we call Sir Didymus. That is his passport registered
My
name.
apologies, Sir Didymus.
Although he's not officially a Sir, but he is to us, if you know what I mean. So basically, Diddy was rescued in 2016. He was rescued with Ludo. They were found abandoned, I believe about as a yearlings, maybe slightly younger. They were obviously emaciated, full of lice, had very little evidence of any sort of healthcare or any care in general, to be honest with you. And Ludo actually was found covered in engine oil.
Oh, wow.
We don't know the exact reasons to why. We're hoping it's not sinister reasons, but you can never rule that out in the rescue industry. So we were so lucky that someone called and we came to pick them up. And I was actually there that day that they came in to Honeysuckle Farm, and to see how they are now and compared to how they came in is like different ponies. They came in, you could just see the demeanour was so sunken and just so given up what it felt like. And for horses and ponies, but ponies particularly that young, to have so little energy and so oomph about them, I just think what has happened to them for them to get like that at such a young age. And the ongoing care that we had to give them was quite a lot. So they both had to be clipped, and that was for the lice treatment. But for Ludo, that was for obviously getting the oil off his coat. We had to do quite a few baths because, as you know, it's quite difficult to get oil off a coat.
Yeah.
And obviously we don't know their level of handling before they came here as well. Like with all our horses, actually, it's a bit of a guessing game. So we have to be really careful that we don't accidentally traumatise them in other ways. But yeah, so with a lot of rehabilitation, a lot of care, a lot of vet treatment, they have progressed really well over the year. They're thriving now, I'm pleased to say. They certainly have evidence of their personality now. There's, you know, to see the shutdown ponies that we saw before versus now, in terms of their personality. I mean, Diddy here is absolutely very, very inquisitive and playful young chap. He definitely appears to like attention. I mentioned to you earlier, you're walking past a group of people, he has to plant himself and kind of say, I want a scratch, please. Thank you very much. He gets his scratch and off he goes. And Ludo, again, very inquisitive and playful, but very protective. So we once had an EAL session with Geronimo, Ludo and Diddy. They're all in a field together, so it's a safe environment to do so. So we put them in the arena and instantly the dynamics shift. It was really interesting to watch. Usually as a three in the field, they're very calm, they're very relaxed, they mutually groom, which is a sign that they're bonding. Yet in the arena, anytime Geronimo tried to come anywhere near Diddy, Ludo put his ears flat back, which is obviously a sign of I'm not happy and quite aggression, and then he would start to chase Geronimo away as if he was protecting Diddy. Which you don't usually see outside of that session. So it was really interesting, and I'd love to put a little microphone if they could talk. Why did you do that, Ludo? Because, and again, exactly. But it just shows you how sometimes the dynamics in horse herds can really shift depending on the situation we put them in, really. But yeah, so they are sponsorship ponies now, and they're absolute crowd pleasers. Everyone loves them. Ludo is really, really interested in those with neurodiversity or anyone that's got something different about them. So we once had a student who had a heart monitor and he was in session and he beelined for that person and put his head on her chest.
Wow.
I know you could probably put science to that, but I like the spiritual element of ponies where you could say he felt that there was a difference in that person and was just being investigative or curious about what was that difference, and potentially a seeking behaviour, a calming down behaviour, or a reassurance behaviour, because we know horses can pick up on our heart rate. So the science behind potentially that situation is that he was acknowledging that, but also he's just always really interested in differences in people, which I think is beautiful, really.
Yeah, and it shows a lot, I think, about horses and ponies in general, that you found Ludo and Didymus in such horrible circumstances, but yet when they see a person who is maybe a little bit different, they make a beeline for them instead of running from them.
Absolutely. So and that's why I have the almost respect for all animals, but these guys in particular, they've had such a harsh beginning, and yet some of them will do anything for a human being. And, you know, and I think they're most forgiving creatures. Bless you. They're most forgiving creatures. It's interesting that she made the noise then, because I was actually thinking about Queenie. So she was one of our EAS ponies, and she had a terrible beginning, found in a barn. 3 others were alive, others weren't. Very emaciated, very, very traumatised. I mean, some of them to this date, behaviourally, are still very much, I don't want to be near people. But Queenie, who was part of that rescue, she's been one of our most successful EAS ponies. She tends to be drawn to those that have high anxiety, who are really going through a hard time, and she simply just stands next to them as a reassuring presence. And she might be like, give me a scratch, give me a scratch, go on. But she tends to be, and I just think all that trauma that she's had and neglect, and yet she's quite happy to go in an arena or a field with somebody or a stable, and almost, again, that reassurance behaviour. It could be anthropomorphic, but again, I don't like to ignore the spirituality of horses, because it's there. It's absolutely there.
I've been through a lot and I know how it feels, so I'm going to help you.
Yeah, exactly. That altruism in a way, almost, as well. So,
and I love how we were talking about horses going through a tough time and then coming here and building back up and helping other people, and Queenie was like,
excuse me,
you're going to talk about me over there?
Yeah, exactly, because she was one of the first kind of group that we worked with in this way. And what we tend to do here is we only retain for 3 years. That's so that they've done their 3 years work, and then they have a chance to go out and be rehomed. And it's not to say that if they ever came back that they couldn't rejoin, or if they told us a lot sooner through their behaviour that they weren't enjoying it anymore, we would then we could remove them from the scheme as well, because if they're not enjoying their job, what's the point? What are we doing, you know?
Yeah, so there's no force in there at all. You don't want to do it, you don't have to.
No, and that's primarily my job in session, is I spot their behaviour in session and keep an eye on the subtle signs of discomfort, pain or stress, so that we don't escalate into large unsafe behaviours. So if that's from a health and safety stance, we don't obviously want biting, kicking, bolting and all that jazz, but more importantly, we don't ever want to put our horses for a situation that they're not comfortable and happy to be in. So yeah, a lot of hard work.
I can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also get to see the magic without as much as work as the guys that are leading the session. So I'm a bit of a glory pincher, really, in that aspect.
I can imagine it feels great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. I could honestly stand here all day and talk about every single one of these gorgeous horses and ponies that are in here.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing us Didymus and Geronimo and sharing your story. It's been great.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
So we are here today at the Mare and Foal Sanctuary with Dawn. Dawn, do you want to introduce yourself? Hello, we're also with Telenor. Yeah. For those that are listening, not watching, we had Telenor just pop his head out of his stable. So Dawn, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are now within the Mare and Foal Sanctuary?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Dawn Vincent. I'm the Director of Fundraising and Communications. It's a big old title, but really I'm here to connect our amazing supporters with these lovely guys who've all been rescued by our charity. And I've been here about 5.5 years now, and I have an amazing team that I work with. And so we give horses a voice, we fundraise for them, and just basically love them very much and want the best for them.
Yeah, and you've been a registered charity for around 30 years now. So how have you seen things change and progress in that time for rescue charities?
Yeah, I think there's big changes. So our founder was Rosemary Kind. She sort of founded the charity back in 1988 when she saw sick, injured, unwanted horses on Dartmoor. Yeah. You know, she just felt the need to try and help ponies in distress on the moors. And yeah, I think in those days they sort of took in everything that they could physically. And yeah, I mean, we've gone on to rescue over 1,000 horses since Rosemary started.
Yeah.
But I think what's changed has been that the Mare and Foal Sanctuary has really become a professional equine welfare charity working across the whole of the southwest. But we also work with all the bigger not bigger agencies, but the other agencies, RSPCA, World Horse Welfare, Red Wings. We're all a big community when it comes to improving welfare and well-being of equines. So yeah.
And you spoke a little bit about Rosemary there and the Dartmoor ponies and the horses that really kind of ignited her passion to help these animals. Was it common for people to do that when Rosemary started, or was she kind of the first person in the area to be like, oh, I'm going to rescue Dartmoors?
I can't speak for Rosemary, but I think that there were a lot of issues for equine welfare 30 odd years ago. I think the equine charities in the UK have worked really hard to improve welfare over the years. So back then we were a mare and foal sanctuary because the predominant concerns were around orphaned foals, mothers that had been killed in car accident, you know, road traffic accidents, that kind of thing. So we're renowned for the mares and foals that we rescue, but we actually rescue all horses from all situations. So, yeah.
And did Rosemary, do you know if she got any help and advice from other people that had similar charities in the area?
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a tenuous link here. So my granny was the founder of the Donkey Sanctuary, which is in Sidmouth. The head office is in Sidmouth. And I know that Granny and Rosemary and other, there was Maureen Rolls as well, who was the Southwest Equine Protection Charity, which we've merged with. You know, they all helped each other. And there was no way everyone could rescue all of the equines without sharing the load. So, you know, my granny as Dr. Sensen at Donkey Sanctuary would focus on the donkeys and the mules. And Rosemary and Maureen would help with the horses. So it was a real team effort. And I think, you know, there is a national group of the equine charity chief executives that meet really regularly. So there's a very good collaborative approach to the well-being of these guys.
Oh, that's amazing. And you said, obviously the charity started in the late 80s, and then you've had over 1,000, you said you've rescued over 1,000 since then. So obviously there's still a massive need for rehoming charities today. What is it that you find most common for most common reasons that the horses and the ponies are being brought into yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I speak from the experience of my time here that we're quite often here for people when their circumstances change. We're a charity that provides advice and support, and we're non-judgmental. So I think we've had those really obvious rescue cases which are cruelty or ignorance based, and there have been prosecutions that have led to criminal proceedings, that kind of thing. The family nest case that we rescued 2 years ago and it went to court this year is a good example where it was 13 equines that came into us for cruelty. They were being used for children's parties, and they were malnourished and needed rescuing. So, you know, we've all sort of stepped in to help and provide evidence. But there's also the owners who just struggle, and something just changes overnight. It could be about mental health, it could be finances. And one of the first sort of horses actually that came in just as I arrived was a thoroughbred horse called Sammy, and he was malnourished and had a whole sort of string of health issues. And really his owner, you know, it wasn't intentional. They just got overwhelmed really quickly and quite suddenly with the vet bills. And I think if charities like the Mare and Foal Sanctuary didn't exist, then I think he would have had a pretty awful end to his life. Whereas we were able to help take him in. He did only kind of manage to be with us for another few weeks, but he was in comfort and getting the care he needed. But yeah, unfortunately he didn't make it. But he was a symbol for me, like, oh my goodness, we really need to be here for horses in need, and we need to raise the money. So one thing I'd like to say is like a huge thank you to our supporters, because actually none of what we provide is actually possible without people donating and leaving legacies to us. So, as I said at the beginning, like my job's hopefully to connect people with our lovely horses and ponies through whatever means is possible for people.
Yeah, and it's clearly such important work because, like you said, all these horses and ponies are coming in from such varied circumstances. And of those horses that do come into yourselves, how many would you say are with the Charity for Life?
Yeah, so we've got around 650 horses in our care at any one time, sort of over the last 5 years. Around 450 of those are in our rehoming scheme, which is fantastic. They get the care they need in a private home setting. They've always got that security to be able to come back to us if anything changes. And that leaves around 150 or so that are at Sanctuary. And I'd say at least 50 of those will be here for the rest of their lives because they have complex care needs and they just can't, that it's not suitable for them to go out. They need to benefit from the amazing care they get here from all our lovely staff. Like, they're so brilliant at their jobs. And here at Coombe Park, we're about to sort of build and finish building our high intensity welfare unit. And that will be specifically for those ponies that are going to be with us for life. But what's really nice is that because we offer our education here and hopefully open days and more in the future, it will be also like the biggest classroom we could possibly have. It's going to have an equine riding simulator, and it's going to be just a great way to showcase that equines live a long time. They can need a lot of complex care, but they can actually live brilliant lives with the right level of care. So
that's great. And you just mentioned there, obviously they have quite a long lifespan. So what precautions does the Sanctuary have in place if a home should fall through? You mentioned things about like mental health, and obviously it's a really hard time for people financially. So when circumstances do change, what support is there for those carers? Yeah,
I think we have a team of welfare outreach advisors who work across the whole of the Southwest. We've got a helpline so people can ring in and get advice from us for free. We our welfare team can go out. I'd call them a welfare and well-being team, really. Like they really are there to help horse owners. And Sanctuary's at last resort, really. If we can do anything to make it so that those horses can stay in situ, then that's brilliant. On our rehoming scheme, we actually have some equines that we will provide a bit of subsidised support for the vet bills so that it makes it possible for those equines to actually be rehomed because that's best for them. So, so I think we can probably do more. I think it's on a case-by-case basis, but we have been known to do that. I know that some of our staff have gone and done the muck out and the routine, gone and fed them for a couple of weeks because that's just been what that person needs for a couple of weeks.
So it's really catered to their needs. Oh, that's great.
So,
and I want to talk now a little bit about the Equine Assisted sessions that you offer here at Coombe Park. So myself and my colleague Rachel were really fortunate to be able to experience one. It was fantastic. So tell our listeners a little bit about when and why Mare and Foal Sanctuary started offering these sessions.
It's part of our charitable object to not only rescue horses and educate about their needs, but to help people that are disadvantaged and struggling in life working with our horses. And I think it kind of goes two ways. I think it gives the horses credibility and relevance in this day and age. There's a lot of equines here that you actually can't ride. So it kind of sends out that really great message that you don't need to ride a horse to be a horse owner. So that's a great message. So I think it has that benefit, and then for the people that take part, hopefully they're falling in love with horses and ponies a little bit. I think it's really hard not to.
Definitely.
And it's a great experience. I think once you've done that, you're going to go away being a champion for this species and know who to call if there's a problem with one you see in the public, and that we're here as an organisation as their ultimate champion. So.
And why horses? Why are they so good for this?
They're prey animals, so they're always in the present moment. So they're great teachers of bringing us into the present moment through how we facilitate sessions. So you can have some really amazing mindful moments with horses. They are constantly looking out for danger, so they're aware of the senses, so what can they hear and see and smell and etc. So they're great mirrors for how we're feeling. So they'll pick up on me with my racing heart rate, and they'll just sense that, and they'll sense if you need comfort or not. They're just very intuitive. I'm sure you've spoke to Amy earlier today, and she's told you all about it as well, far better than me. But yeah, I am an equine assisted learning facilitator, and I was part of that whole cohort of staff that went through the training to deliver this to people that are struggling in life, and it's been really transformative. And I think that the horses get something out of it as well. There are some that really enjoy human interaction.
Yeah.
So, you know, every horse that we take in has a pathway, and we put the best steps in place for them, for their well-being and their welfare. And as Amy is a big champion, she's always there keeping an eye out for the horses in the session as well. And we love them working at liberty, so that they've got choice in what we do with them. So we try to promote that they're an equal partner. And then the rest is sort of the proof's in the pudding when you actually have a go.
It definitely
and you see
is.
it for yourself.
Yeah, it was amazing. And do you have any like standout experiences or examples of a session that you've held or seen that has just completely transformed someone?
Oh my goodness! I mean, yes. I think
probably
some
too many to count, is there?
Yeah, I mean, some are. You know, the sessions are a safe space, so you know, in terms of what happens is kind of kept in that session.
Course,
But there are probably a few moments I've had. I think what they do is they enable you to apply what's happening to life. So. Once I was leading, well, my participant was leading Pringle. And Pringle just put the brakes on. He just didn't want to walk. We were going for a walk, but he kind of stopped. And it just allowed a conversation that my participant never expected, where they just started to talk about, you know, how actually they get blocks in life and it makes it really difficult for them. And yeah, so it enables a conversation to happen that would otherwise be really unnatural to bring about. And another one that just really comes to mind is it was a participant who was having quite a moment, and they were crouching down, just being with the pony, and the pony sat down, and I've never seen that.
Wow.
It leant into the sort of wall and then just sat down on his bottom, and I couldn't believe it.
That's so sweet.
It was just a bit of an unusual situation, but yeah, I mean, that was the horse mirroring how relaxed they were feeling in that moment, and I'll always remember that. There was a real moment between the two of them
I bet that feels
meant
so
a lot.
good. Yeah, as a participant to have that understanding pretty much with another sentient being.
Yeah,
I think that's so
there was
beautiful.
I mean, you know, seeing is believing, but it was a real moment.
Talking about the equine assisted sessions, that session that myself and Rachel had earlier, we had Inula in the session. She's gorgeous. She was so trusting, so calm. But is it true that her reason for being here isn't a great one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like most of the equines, they've got their own rescue story, and Inula's was one of those cases of neglect and actually cruelty, because she was lame when she came into us. So X-rays revealed that she had a pellet in her foot, like from a pellet gun. So she'd been shot. So we don't know how or when or who did it. But we know that must have been so traumatic for her. And it's still lodged there. It's in an inoperable kind of position. So we have to carefully monitor that. So yeah, I mean, she was part of a big group we rescued. It's why we're here, thank goodness.
And I think it speaks levels of how sentient they are, that she just walks right into an arena with people, and she's so caring and trusting of them despite what she's gone through.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
They're just amazing.
I
can't really say more than that.
Well, that sounds amazing. And we spoke about a lot of the stuff that Mare and Foal Sanctuary do. So from all the rescue work right down to the education and the welfare stuff that you offer.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners help you then? So obviously donations you mentioned, help, they go a long way. What are the ways that they can donate to help you guys the most?
I think there are so many ways. I think if you are not in a position to donate, you can follow us on Facebook and X. I nearly called it Twitter, but it's X. You know, all the social media platforms, we're there trying to share our message. We can do guest speaking at local clubs and just share our message with everybody. So there's very noisy radio going on in the background because it's a working sanctuary at the end of the day. What else can we do? People can just join our mailing list, and perhaps maybe later on they will get some of the newsletters through and hear all our lovely things that we do. We send a calendar to all our lovely supporters once a year. And I think, there's just lots of different ways. Perhaps now you can't support us, but you might in a few years' time, things might change.
Yeah, and it's keeping that up to date as well, isn't it? Being able to know what's happening and know that it brings that connection to be able to stay up to date with new rescues and stuff that you bring in as well. I love that.
There's a couple of things you can do as well where you get something in return. So actually there's the adoption scheme where you can adopt Geronimo, Ludo, Vogue, who you work with today. I'm sure there's one other, Sir Didymus, who's our little miniature pony.
So cute.
And so for £30 a year or £2.50 a month, you can adopt them. And obviously you get newsletters specifically about how they're getting on with certificate and lots of other bits. And we also have prize-led fundraising, so you could pay £1 for a lottery ticket and you might have a chance of winning £25,000, which one of our supporters did. So
that's great.
Yeah, so there's loads of ways that you can support the charity.
It's great.
Yeah.
And then for the general public, people who may not specifically own a horse, we spoke about in the Equine Assisted session, that giving them space and time, and they mirror our body language. So what about on a country walk, if you just come across a horse leaning over a fence? How is it best for the general public to approach them and deal with them in that instance?
I think one of the first things is their eyes are at the side of their heads. So try and approach a horse from the side, because otherwise they can't see you and it might startle them. Avoid feeding them, because they've got a lovely owner back there who's doing that job for them, and you might give them something they really shouldn't eat, which could make them ill. And I think just, be softly spoken and talk as you approach them, and just read their body language. So their ears will go back if they're not happy to speak to you. They might step back. But if they've kind of got a foot resting and they're just licking and chewing, they're probably quite happy and happy to stroke them. So, Oh,
I love that. That's really good to know about that different signs of body language as well. Listen, I could talk about these gorgeous animals all day.
Me too.
But the one thing I want to ask you before we go is, what is next for Mare and Foal? We've been dotted around here. We've heard a lot of different exciting things coming up. So what's the one thing that you're most looking forward to in the future?
Oh, I think we're really pressured for capacity at the moment, and we have so many more that we could be helping. So we need to ultimately raise more money, and that might enable us to finish this site, get it open more regularly to the visitors, and then that will allow us perhaps to rescue more horses and ponies and be out there in the community for our welfare, for people that need us. So. Oh, and another way that people can support us is actually to think of the Mare and Foal Sanctuary when it comes to leaving something in their will as a gift. Actually, almost half, if not more, of our income is from legacies, and actually fundraising is really, really difficult at the moment. And we totally recognise our supporters are, at the end of the day, we're living through a cost of living crisis. Energy bills are really high, and we have seen that our supporters are perhaps donating a little bit less frequently, and just purely because it's just really difficult times, and they tell us that. But legacies are a much longer term commitment and help sustain our charity. I don't think without the legacy income that we get, we could afford our wage bills sometimes. So we're just so grateful to all those supporters that have remembered us. And here at Coombe Park again, we have got our legacy boards on display when we have events to just make sure that those people are remembered forever.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dawn.
Thank you.
It's been great to talk to you.
Thanks for coming today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
It's been so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of our listeners. You can find out news about our podcast on our Instagram or TikTok handles, which is at Animal Friends Insurance, or on our Facebook page at Animal Friends Pet Insurance.